Hi everybody, welcome to the Open Translation Lounge here at TED Global 2013. This is one of several sessions we're doing all week, inviting TED speakers to meet with translators both here in Scotland as well as others joining us via Skype from around the world. Today actually we have Hetain Patel joining us, who was actually did an amazing talk, and actually if there was a speaker that we could actually pull out of all of the speakers that was perfect for this space, it was his. Talking about language and identity and how language actually shapes identity and things like that. So the conversation is going to be a great one, given the number of translators that we have in the room today. Joining us here on site is Sebastian from Spain, Palash from Bengal, Kamsung from Korea, and Katya from Germany. And joining us remotely from Skype, we have Lydia from Spain, Jenny Chen, who's coming in from Taiwan, Jenny Yang, who's in Chicago, and Lazarus joining us from Greece. Hi guys, how are you? I want to, again, my intro talked about language and how language is so much of, how much of our identity is actually built up into language. And I was wondering, actually, we did a session here this morning with, which was all in Arabic. And I've been spending a lot of this week with a lot of the translators who are all speaking their second language. And I noticed that the people that were speaking in their native tongue seemed different. Their body language was different. Their personality seemed different. Which kind of, the question I kind of pose is, if you speak multiple languages, do you have multiple identities? Given your work, I'm just curious.
Maybe you do. Language theorists kind of say that you think through your first language. That you understand the world and any subsequent languages you learn through the kind of codes and the constructs and the rules of your first language. But I guess with people who are bilingual or multilingual from an early age, I guess it comes into question of which one of those languages forms the way you think. So, for example, my first language was the Indian language of Gujarati, but I feel like my first language was English because somewhere along the lines they swapped a bit. So if I had to describe which way I think, I'll probably say English, but it's probably not even English or Indian or Gujarati, but somewhere else in between or elsewhere. And in terms of do you think differently or have different identities, you were saying in your question, I think certainly you will feel differently when you speak in another language. If I speak a little bit of French, and when I speak a bit of French, again, I kind of find myself moving my body differently, just as you described it, almost in imitation of, almost kind of remembering French people that I've spoken to. My wife is French, and how they talk, and some of that comes into that. But I think also, regardless of whether it's a different language or not, even different topics you talk about or who you're talking to, I think can change how your body language is and the way that your body and your words communicate.
Actually, Kamsung, could you actually, I could just get back to the question, do you feel like you have a multiple identity? Is your English identity a totally different person?
Well, it makes some difference. I mean, but I'm slightly different from his ideas. I mean, what he's saying, because I sometimes get confused between those two, languages. And well, I speak Korean and some English, and well, things like using gestures in my country is not considered to be very serious talking.
Right.
Okay, so we just what we do is your spine straightened up like this, and then you speak slowly without actually moving your hands or things like that. And when I begin speaking English, I get I do very similar things, so it's kind of very hard to get the line between those two languages.
Okay. Actually, let's go back onto Skype. Jenny Yang, who are you in English and who are you in Chinese?
I think I talked to Krystian about this identity thing. I think as she mentioned, like when she goes to the West, people think she's come from New York, but when she's New York, people think she's from the West. So I think I'm living in Chicago. I come from Shanghai. I work in motor mobility. So basically, daily I speak English. When I talk to the people who speak English, I don't feel, significant differences. Myself feel like mixed very well with my colleagues.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing is when I go back home, if in Shanghai I speak English, I feel totally different. And they feel I totally different, feel like I was coming from a different world.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay. Actually, Hetain, I'm going to go back to you. Humor is a big part of your work, and humor is one of the things that gets so lost in language. I think when you actually speak a foreign language, trying to be funny in a foreign language is even harder than being funny in your own language sometimes. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I get. Yeah, a lot of my work, I like to use humor because I talk a lot about identity, and because it's can be such a serious subject matter. I always want to connect with an audience or with someone you're talking to. So humor feels like a good sweetener to kind of connect with somebody, and I'm influenced, I guess, by the humor that I engage with, which is a lot of English humor from comedy, which I like. So naturally, this is the way that I also make humor in my work. So to me, to be honest, it was a question whether it could work outside the UK. I had kind of anxieties also of coming to TED and there being such an international audience,
right.
And whether that would translate. So, to get such a heartwarming kind of response was kind of a bit unexpected, and I think part of that, well, it'd be interesting to hear other people's ideas on that, but I think there's so much more involved in communication rather than just the words,
right.
And I think that translates not just to ideas but also the transmission of humor or warmth, right, or connection, body language that we spoke about, your facial gestures,
exactly,
or tone of voice.
Yeah, okay. Wonderful. Actually, the session's going to be starting soon, so we're going to wrap up relatively quickly. So I just want to give one more answer. Actually, I was hoping Katja could answer that same question. Humor, how it translates.
Yeah, for us, it's always kind of funny as we have 3 languages in the family. I'm actually German, my husband is Turkish, and my children go to an international school. They speak English. So sometimes this involves very funny situations when we switch languages in between, and I think somebody who's not in our situation wouldn't understand the jokes behind it. So we really enjoy this multilingual experience, and sometimes we make a lot of fun about.
So no knock-knock jokes in the house, it sounds like. Okay, actually, I think we're going to have to wrap. Thank you, everybody, for coming, and please come back again, actually, after the next session and tomorrow morning. So thank you so much. Goodbye.